Well, hello there and welcome to the Exponential Australia Church Leaders Podcast. We are absolutely delighted that you are joining us today as we seek to continue to do all that we can when it comes to cheering on evangelism, church planting, multiplication, innovation, and for our normal listeners, you would know that we love to get a wide range of incredible guests that we have on the podcast with us. And today we have some of our very own homegrown leaders from here in Australia, the incredible Ben and Emily Higgins. Guys, it's great to have you on the podcast with us today.
Great to be here, Charlie.
Absolutely.
So good.
Hey, Charlie, I was talking with someone yesterday. We were saying how amazing you are.
Oh.
So maybe we should start there today.
Oh, that is a very kind gesture.
Thank God for Charlie. We were actually on, this person and I found ourselves on a Zoom, not because we'd come up with the idea, but because you had introduced us.
Wow.
And I feel like that is a common theme and thread across the Aussie churches. How did you guys meet? Well, Charlie introduced us. So, mate, thanks for having us.
Well, I feel both very encouraged as well as very embarrassed, and I feel like I've gone from being the podcast host to the podcast guest. So thank you for that very kind thing. Well, guys, you are an absolute power couple, I think, and I'm sure many others do in the Aussie church. Ben is the recently appointed National Director of Alpha Australia. Emily heads up all things Alpha Youth in Australia. You guys are doing an amazing job. You've had a rich legacy in the Australian church. And before we kind of get to some of the things that have kind of featured in your leadership journey and your heart for the church in Australia, I'd love for you guys just to give us a bit of a thumbnail sketch about your life, your family up until now. Give us a bit of an insight into life in the Higgins household.
Great. I feel over to you.
Yeah, the Higgins household is a blessed one. It's loud and busy. We are married with 4 children.
Wow.
Almost 18 years. In March it will be. So, you know, our marriage is almost an adult. So that must mean we're mature, right? And yeah, we like to have a lot of fun. We are definitely mission focused, as a family, but we like to have a lot of fun as well.
So good. And tell us, how did you guys get to where you are today? Obviously, you've been married for 18 years. Ben and Emily, you've both had a long involvement with youth ministry and Youth Alive and stuff like that. Tell us about some of your journey up until today.
Yeah, I mean, we feel really privileged to be kind of doing what we're doing now with Alpha. And I think one reflection is there are so many amazing women and men around Australia, around our nation, serving Jesus, planting churches, leading ministries. I'm loving seeing the innovation around Australia, different ministries that have been kind of started, and particularly in the last 3 to 5 years. So how did we get here? I don't know. We kind of just started. We just kept saying yes to things.
Yes.
I feel like saying yes to open doors or yes to responsibilities. We never envisaged ourselves necessarily in this role. Necessarily, I think it's just more we love the church. We love Jesus. We've been involved in youth ministry in different ways for a long time, and then obviously in church ministry and in church planting. So there was never a master plan, Charlie.
Yes.
There
never is.
Thing. Yeah, there never is, right? And if you have one, good luck.
Many of the plans.
How do you make God laugh, right? Showing your plan. So it's I don't know. We've just said yes to lots of things, but and there's been lots of mistakes and lots of learnings, and
I think what I'd add to that is, especially in the younger years, saying yes to everything, which meant looked like local church serving and involvement and being planted, but then also opportunities like Youth Alive that brought us to, work across the church a little bit more. And I, said yes to budget catering. Who wants to cater for 400 students? It wasn't an opportunity you were excited for, but it was those things that I said yes to that really shaped me. And then now we find ourselves in more, I think it's a stage of life where you actually have to say no to things.
Yes.
So you have to say yes for a long time, and then you get to a point where you're we actually have to refine, we actually have to focus a little bit more. now we need to say a few no's, but not from the wrong spirit. So I think that kind of defines our journey thus far.
So good. I love that. A long obedience in the same direction. I'm sure many of us have heard that famous Eugene Peterson quote, and that is definitely a feature I find, particularly of a lot of Christian leaders that started off from that place of going, Lord, wherever you want to take me, however I can serve you. And that's definitely a beautiful feature of what you both shared. Hey, we're going to cover off on a whole bunch of different things today, from passing the baton to evangelism, church planting, your heart for the next generation. I'm very excited for this conversation. And I wanted to say up front, Exponential are huge fans of Alpha. We consider ourselves huge friends of Alpha, both in terms of organizationally, but the amazing people that work and lead Alpha here in Australia and globally. And we're just so excited for what's happening in and through Alpha, particularly here in Australia, having celebrated 1 million people having participated and done Alpha in 2025. It's remarkable. It's quite significant. But Ben, this has been a big year for you by way of leadership transitions and stepping into the national leadership of Alpha. You have become the national director. I'd love for you to start just by, I guess, giving us a bit of a glimpse into both. How did you get involved with Alpha? Where did that come from? But also what this year has looked and felt like for you as you've stepped into quite a role of influence and significance within the Aussie church.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Well, firstly, right back at you. Alpha is very grateful for Exponential, the great work that the team are doing, and yeah, what a cool thing, like a beautiful thing to be in ministry together.
Yes.
And to serve and support churches and church leaders around the nation. So, yeah, we're huge fans of Exponential, mate. It's very cool. Alpha, yeah, I mean, it sounds better than it sounds impressive. Like it's, and in a sense, it's amazing. Like in terms of, I'm not belittling in any way the ministry of Alpha. It's like, it's a miracle. It really is. And I think it's a privilege to be in this role. Yeah, but I think when I think about Alpha more broadly, like so much of what's happening, well, all of what is happening in Australia is because of the goodness of God, the grace of God on Alpha. And it's really been built on the sacrifice of so many, in a way, nameless and faceless people, like as in so many amazingly faithful people, same, you know, just faithfully serving and giving, praying, inviting, hosting a table, all of those sorts of things, like church leaders that have created spaces in their ministries, young people that have run Alpha in their schools. Like it's just a whole lot of people in different spaces, people that have run Alpha in pubs and cafes and all different places. So yeah, I think what's happening right now is thanks to the incredible leadership that's gone before us. We now have the privilege of standing on their shoulders. But what God is doing through Alpha right now across Australia is so much about the grace of God and the incredible leadership that has gone before us, that has laid a platform and a foundation for what's happening now. So yeah, I think globally, I think about obviously Nikki and Pippa and, you know, the founders of Alpha, but even so many amazing leaders now around the world. I just feel like we're just joining in with everyone else, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In what God is doing. And there are so many days where we kind of just turn to each other and we think, how did we get here? Like, this is amazing. And the journey into Alpha was not planned. It was prompted by the Holy Spirit. That's probably the best way I can describe it. We didn't have a master plan. Again, we were leading a church campus at the time. We, over the period of 12 months, felt the Lord really stirring our heart that we needed to serve the church more broadly. And we didn't know what that looked like, but one conversation led to another. And in a short space of time, it was clear God was leading us into Alpha. And again, it's been miraculous, like seeing what's taken place. And so when my first interaction with Alpha was actually probably you, Charlie.
Way
and
back.
obviously Ben. Ben Woodman and Jason Ballard and some of the work we were doing with Youth Alive and Alpha together as a partnership. So it's been an amazing journey, and it's really exciting to see now what God's doing, not just in Australia, but around the world with Alpha, with over 30 million participants now globally.
Wow.
It's remarkable. Yeah.
Incredible. Ben, I'd love to dig in just a tiny bit deeper, just around, obviously we're in an interesting season for the church in Australia where if there haven't already been transitions and succession, there is definitely going to be more, particularly as the generation hands on to the next generation. There's that famous quote that, obviously each generation is charged with rediscovering the gospel, and we stand upon the shoulders of those who have been before us. But I just wonder if you would kind of, as the Lord prepared you in your heart, what did it look like to prepare yourself for that kind of leadership, and what it meant internally, externally? I know everyone deals with these things differently, but give us a bit of your journey as you prepared for that.
Yeah. There are always transitions in life. Sorry, I'll say it this way. Every transition in life, there are two realities. There are things you can prepare for, and there's things you can't prepare for. So I feel like for those that are listening or watching and have had children, there are things you can prepare about having a child, and there are things that you won't know until it happens.
Yes.
And then you've got to deal with it in the moment. I feel like leadership transition is a bit the same. There are some things you can do to prepare, and you're wise to do so. And then there are things that you really just can't prepare for. You just have to experience it and then stay humble and stay dependent, right? And stay dependent on the Holy Spirit for his wisdom, and dependent on others. Like we're not created to be independent. We're actually created to be interdependent with each other. And so,
very good.
Yeah, I think that's like hardwired into us as human beings, and we do well to recognize that in our leadership and in our ministry. I think one of the challenges with leadership transition is you feel, and maybe you don't even consciously do this, but you can feel the pressure to be like those that have shaped you, and to lead like those who've inspired you. But what we need from every generation of church leadership or ministry leadership is we need them to be uniquely who God has anointed and called them to be. And so there is real tension there. We were actually just at a meeting yesterday with a group of church leaders from across every denomination. And we had a young guy in the room, he's in his early 20s, and he shared about, the life of David. And he was basically sharing, like, for his generation as a Alpha, Gen Z, like we struggle with taking on all of like Saul's armor and all those things that we're tempted to take on, right? But all we need is a sling and a stone. And I think that's the same challenge every generation faces, is like working out what is Saul's armor and working out what is the sling and the stone, and trusting God to step forward with the sling and the stone and the thing that he's called you to do, and doing it in the way he's called you to do it in your unique grace, and not being weighed down by all of the other stuff.
Yes. And
I would say that's probably, I don't know, I mean, Emily can tell you what my real problems are. But that's probably one of my biggest challenges in this season, is like just working out how has God called us to lead, and what does that look like, and what has he called us to do,
Yes.
And I think every generation has to kind of wrestle with that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Emily, is there anything you'd love to throw in there before I ask you a question as you reflect upon Ben's leadership?
It was more referring, to the work I think Ben has done, where he felt prompted to prepare himself ahead of the season,
That's
and
great.
so he studied more, and he put, and the funny thing is he put on these extra hours, and you think it'll all be, once I hand that last assignment in, it'll all be done. But God is really just preparing your capacity as well, right?
Yes.
Not just his ability to study and learn more. And so there wasn't a quieter season that came after that. But certainly want to honor Ben for the work he did to prepare for the season he finds himself now in.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think some of that was, again, prompted by the Lord, which was like I love running, and I was on a run and this was a number of years ago now, and I felt prompted to prepare. And I felt prompted. I had 3 years to prepare, and there were some areas that I felt God speaking to me about relationally, in my own walk with Him, spiritually, mentally, in terms of study. And so there was like a few areas that I pinpointed, and it was funny how after that there was like a number of people that came up to me, unrelated to each other, not knowing really where I was at, who all had a similar encouragement. Some were prophetic words, others were just encouragement, and so, or questions. And so that really kind of was a catalyst for me to pinpoint some areas and then kind of really prepare. And so I guess there's some things that we are responsible for, right? And there are other things that God is responsible for. We are responsible for preparing ourselves. God is responsible for opening the doors of opportunity. We don't need to force the door of opportunity. We just have to be faithful and prepare ourselves. So, yeah.
I love that. And I think that kind of introduces, very well for us today, the immense, opportunities that are all around us when it comes to the work of God in Australia. And one of the areas that I wanted to jump into is particularly focusing upon Emily's area of responsibility within Alpha, and that's the just enormous opportunities that are at hand for Gen Z, for Gen Alpha, when it comes to the good news of Jesus. Emily, you head up all things Alpha Youth and the amazing things that are happening through Alpha Youth around Australia. I'd just love for you to kind of talk to us about how you've been in that role for a number of years now in various capacities, but more formally as kind of the leader of that. Tell us about some of what's happening around Australia when it comes to young people, your heart for high school students, for young adults, all the things that you get to be involved with.
Yes, thanks, Charlie. It's an exciting season and one that I dreamt of for many years. I became a teacher because my life was impacted as a teenager, and I thought, how do I best impact the next generation? And I thought that was education. Certainly it plays a part, and being involved in Christian schools, you get to shape lives immensely. But it wasn't quite enough for me, although it played its part. I really hoped for more. Wow. And I had received a word over 15 years ago now that I would see fires in schools all around Australia.
Incredible.
And again, you have to be faithful where you are first, right? But then you still desire more, and you think, God, how are you going to help this come to be? And of course, it's way beyond me, but I get to play my small part. And as we join together, we are hearing reports that it's like wildfires starting in schools. And people have referred to, some Alpha Youth ministries being run in schools by young people. And yeah, we're seeing young people really at the helm of peer-to-peer evangelism.
Wow.
And that's what gets me so excited, is the adults making way for the young people to share, the adults opening the door, the adults being the resource holders and the helpers, but allowing the students to lead. And that even took a big shift for me. I wasn't all there yet, but I quickly realized that it's not just about us ministering to them. We must disciple and equip, but we must allow the young people to lead. And in fact, they have something special for their own generation.
Yes. Emily, that's so exciting. And for those who are listening today and haven't yet, you're crazy if you haven't, but if you haven't yet gone to get your hands on the Alpha Youth resources, you're crazy not to. Like the way that it empowers young people, puts them on the front foot of reaching their friends, the opportunities in this day and age to reach young people with the good news of Jesus through the Alpha Youth materials is incredible. So I just want to absolutely concur with that. Now, the next question that I'd love to ask you both, and this is always a funny question to ask, and it's one that Jess and I often chuckle about, but is particularly the dynamics of being a married couple in ministry. Like it's, I think for Jess and I, one of our hardest years of marriage was our first year of planting a church together, and just the dynamics of what it means to juggle life and ministry and work together. And I mean, obviously you serve in different areas, and yet you do so much together. You guys are an amazing team together. I'd love to hear how you guys juggle that, manage it, give us a little bit of an insight as to some of the ways that you guys have walked that together.
Okay, well,
ominous silence.
We haven't compared notes, but obviously we got the questions. Charlie's very organised. We got the questions in advance, and I kind of sketched out a few responses to different questions. And Emily has an extensive summary response to everything. But to this question, I just wrote to myself, "Ha ha." So I don't know how you'd like to interpret that.
That's great.
I would say that I am loving this part of. This is the first time we've formally worked in ministry together in paid employment, kind of. So up to this point, and up until about 5 years ago, we'd never worked in ministry formally like that. Emily had always volunteered. She worked as a teacher. She volunteered in the margins in everything that we did, whether that was youth ministry, local church ministry, church planting, and volunteered. So I'm loving this personally. I'm glad it didn't maybe happen 15, 18 years ago, to be honest. I think we've both grown in our appreciation of each other and the unique strengths and weaknesses that we have. And yeah, it's oh man, every day's a new adventure, right? And so, I don't know, but I'm loving it. But maybe, are you loving it? Or?
Oh, absolutely. No regrets. In some ways, we absolutely have always worked together in terms of where our heart has always been the center of God's call and living that out. And although, if you want to look at it in terms of vocation and paid work, yes, I was a teacher and that's how, my hours were spent in paid work. But certainly always my full heart was in ministry. But that did mean I wasn't always alongside Ben as much as I hoped or desired. But like Ben said, you can see God's hand in how he prepared us separately, as well as in some ways together, and culminating in this season now where more than ever we are able to be and outwork that together. We still have our separate focuses as well. But it's an amazing opportunity. I think there is a call on any married couple, whether you end up spending your hours in the day working on the same thing. I believe that the call is over a couple. It's over a family. Our family contributes to this, not just two individuals who are married, and that's significant.
That's brilliant.
And we need to bring our whole selves to what we do. But you sometimes look for examples, you sometimes compare, and that can be both good and bad. But at the end of the day, you realize that we have to bring our unique selves and figure out how we best lead together. And there are lots of similarities between us, but very much different. But we're not quite opposites like most couples, although we're different. And so every couple is, we have to go through, work out how we best work together. But I think the best thing we've done is allow each other to keep developing personally.
That's great.
But then also together and work on both.
So good.
Yeah, Charlie, I'm sure you've got so much wisdom to share, from what you and Jess have learned. And I think, one of the things we've learned, it would be to appreciate the uniqueness of each other and not either be insecure about that and also give that room to grow and just not to compare yourself as a couple to other ministry couples as well. And so, and the other thing would be just building friendships with ministry couples. We've got friends in ministry that we've been now friends with for 15 years or more, and having some other couples that you can kind of just talk with, relate to,
very good,
laugh with, cry with, vent with, whatever it is, who understand some of the unique kind of challenges that come with, kind of doing ministry together.
Absolutely.
That's been massive for us. So, but just don't compare yourself.
So good.
every couple's different, because every person's different. Every marriage is different. Every couple is different. The call on you is different. Just because certain people operate like that doesn't mean that's right for you.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And keep building your friendship as well. Like, keep building your marriage and your friendship outside of ministry. I think that's the other danger, is that it becomes everything that you do together is ministry oriented. And I think one thing we've tried to do very intentionally is build our friendship outside of ministry, and so that ministry isn't the only. Ministry is the overflow of our relationship with God and our marriage, right? Rather than it being the center of that. So yeah.
I would say too, having friends that aren't in ministry is just as important, because we are able to have conversations that aren't centered around ministry and are just really fun. And some of our closest friends bring excellence in other areas, challenge us in other areas in good ways. And I think that's helped us to, not just be in ministry mode every moment of the day, And of course, we're all very passionate about what we do, so it can easily creep in, and just keeping those boundaries in place. I'm worse at it because I'm the female brain that is often like spaghetti. Ben's a bit more boxed, and and I've had to work a bit harder at it, but boundaries are really important, where we will engage in conversations about ministry and when.
Yeah, I love that, guys. Such insightful responses, and that was worth the price of admission just in hearing your little insights there. But where I'd love to take our conversation now is one of the things I've always loved about Alpha is that it is always sounding the alarm on evangelism, and the front door of the church needs to be reaching people, needs to be the good news of Jesus and opportunities to ask questions. And of course, Alpha would be known to many people. And yet I think where we are as the church in the West, and particularly in Australia, is that for so long, it feels like we have been, like there hasn't been those opportunities for evangelistic conversations. People are maybe anti the church or anti having a conversation about Jesus. And yet one of the things that we're seeing and hearing, and that Alpha is bringing to our attention, is that people are more spiritually open and curious than ever before. That you guys have just run an amazing tour of events, really trying to bring attention to some of the latest data around just how spiritually hungry and curious people actually are around Australia. And so I wonder if you'd kind of just, as you guys are engaging with churches, seeing things on the front line as you're engaging and coaching churches and using Alpha, what are some of maybe the stories that you're hearing or the trends that you're observing that could encourage our listeners when it comes to their own person-to-person evangelism, church evangelism, using Alpha? How might you want to bring us on in that today?
Maybe I start with some of the church side of things just broadly, and then Emily can speak into the next generation, because that's particularly where we're seeing in Australia and around the world, right? This new kind of thing God's doing. But as you mentioned, Charlie, we just hosted at Alpha the Every Generation tour. And so that was across 4 major cities in Australia. We had just over 600 church leaders from pretty much every tribe and denomination a part of those events. And a part of each of those events was listening to church leaders about what God's doing right now. And I was actually just reading one of the stories today again from a church leader in Perth. And he says this, he says, in 20 years of ministry in Perth, I've never seen this kind of hunger.
Wow.
And then he goes on to say, for so long, evangelism here felt impossible. Perth is quite a comfortable city, right? Sunshine, beaches, the whole thing, great coffee, not as good as Sydney. And he's like, he was kind of expressing like, how do you ever convince people to get to church when you're competing against all of that? And but he's just saying, like, he just told a number of stories that have happened even in the last few weeks in his church about 30-somethings, 20-somethings walking into church off the street, having deep questions about faith, giving their lives to the Lord. And we heard stories like that in every single city we went to. And I'm sure at Exponential, you're hearing the same stories. So anecdotally, and we're hearing stories like that all the time. The frequency of those stories, when I go and speak in churches now, it's not uncommon to hear a story, something like, how did that person come to Alpha? Well, they had a dream about Jesus and Jesus told them to come to church.
Come on. Wow.
Like those stories are happening more and more. Like if I went back even 5 years, I would say when I started with Alpha, those things weren't happening.
Yes.
Something's happening right now in our nation in this kind of like Kairos moment. And then the data is also backing it up. So even just to give you an idea, and I think what's exciting is the church is responding.
Yes.
Like, we've been, we've been encouraging the church. This is kind of like our Dunkirk moment, the miracle of Dunkirk, 300,000 people trapped on the beaches, Allied soldiers, and British Army puts out the call, and every kind of fishing boat, fishing vessel, pleasure craft, whoever could responded, and they saved over 338,000 soldiers from the beaches. This is kind of our moment. This is our Dunkirk moment to respond because there is such hunger. And this year alone, we are up 40% on last year in terms of number of alphas being run.
Wow.
So, this year in Australia alone, we've had over 130,000 people on an alpha somewhere in prisons, pubs, cafes, churches, schools, youth ministries, you name it, in lots of different languages and lots of different places geographically, in small towns and rural centres, in huge cities. So the church does seem like the church is also responding to this incredible hunger. So that's really exciting. But the next gen space, like what's happening through young people, like I think that's probably the most exciting part of all of it. So maybe you can share some of that.
Absolutely. I mean, we often know the stats already that young people are the ones that are most open to God and often say yes to Jesus before they're 18 years old. And so it's nothing new for churches to be excited about reaching the next generation. But I think where the change is that this generation are bold to share.
Yes.
And as a millennial, we hoped to change the world or thought we might have been able to, but this generation actually think they can and take it upon themselves to do so. And they will actually filter that with whatever area they have, whether that's climate change or whatever. But if they know Jesus, then they will share their faith. And I think it's just about encouraging and bringing covering for them, because there's also spiritual opposition. As great as the opportunity is, there is a lot of opposition. I think that's the part we play as the adults is to pray for them, with them, and show them how the Holy Spirit can be their help and guide.
So good. Love that. And I wonder if you'd take a moment to also just talk a bit about spheres. Tell our listeners about spheres, and maybe they've got a young person in their church that would really jump out to them.
Absolutely. Spheres is a gathering on the Gold Coast for 3 days, 3 nights and 4 days actually. It's for students in year 10 to 12 who want to make a difference in their sphere of influence. The idea is that they come with a leader, whether it's a chaplain or youth leader that comes with them. So it's essentially equipping them in teams to be sent back so that we see the fruits in schools and churches all around Australia.
Wow. So good. I would, again, want to go, you're crazy not to get a young person along there. Ben, you're about to say something to add to that, my friend.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the story, so it's grown organically. So Spheres started with about 30 young people who were being trained, who sort of put their hand up and said, we want to make a difference in our schools. And every year since then, it's doubled or over doubled in size. So this year we had just over 300 teenagers from around Australia. Next year, we're capping at 500. We've got young people coming from as far as Perth, Tasmania, Adelaide,
Epic.
Throughout New South Wales. The dream would be that we can then start those same events in different cities around Australia. But yeah, it's just become a gathering point for young people to be trained and equipped and then sent back out in their schools to make a difference. So really exciting. Yeah.
So what you're saying is get in quick if you want them to be able to make it.
Yeah, basically. Actually, getting quick. we're trying to work out what do we do. Is it like, because we know it will sell out, like in terms of, and that's not the heart of it. We do want to make it more accessible, but it's, just trying to sort of, how do we partner with what God's doing and partner with church as well.
And it really is about youth ministries bringing their few best leaders.
Yes.
It's not about bringing the whole youth ministry. It is those leaders in year 10 to 12.
Yeah.
And so you've got that maturity to the ones that gather, and then they can go and reach the others. And Alpha at its best is really that leadership pipeline.
Yes.
It's Holy Spirit empowered evangelism with that built-in leadership pipeline. And so giving them that tool as well as other tools like love is our weapon. We don't want to be too prescriptive, although we don't want to be too loose and just, you can change the world, go do it.
Yes.
It's like you can change the world, but these are a few ways that you can do that. And then they have time to dream and plan about what that looks like for their context and have ownership and leadership into that.
Let me give you one story, Charlie, and I know you've got to get to another question or maybe to wrap up, but there was a young girl came last year to Spheres, or this year, anyway, it's all blowing into one. About 15 years old, went back with two other friends to her her public high school, where there was no chaplaincy program. And she started a prayer meeting with 3 students, and it's now grown to 150 students in a public high school.
Wow.
Her church didn't even know about what she was doing. They found out because she approached her youth pastor and asked for 100 Bibles. And he said, what do you need 100 Bibles for? And she told him, well, I've got 100 friends at school who don't know Jesus and I need to give them all a Bible. They're all coming to my Christian group at lunchtime. And stories like that are happening more and more right around Australia from people that are kind of just stepping up, responding to the call of God.
Yes.
And going. So it's really exciting.
So good.
Yeah.
And such an encouragement to hear, because I think we hear those types of stories and we almost expect them to be in another country, but it's actually happening in our own backyard.
It is.
There is 2 more questions that I want to kind of throw your way. And maybe the first one I'll aim at you, Ben, because I'd love to just hear your take on this. And then for our last question, I'd really just love each of you just to kind of reflect on your ministry journeys, your leadership journeys, and just go, hey, what's something that you wish, how can somebody else not pay the stupid tax and almost hear something that you wish you'd known earlier on in your ministry journey? But the first question that I'd love to throw to you, Ben, would just be around innovation. Like, it feels like innovation is one of those words that's, there's some gravitas to it in this season. Alpha's done an incredible job, particularly in the last couple of years, at innovating, doing new things. Feels like there's immense opportunities in our nation at the moment for innovation, whether it be church planting, evangelism, any range of things. I just wonder if you'd talk to, I guess, the process by which you're helping to lead innovation within Alpha. Alpha Australia has always packed, and I think the Aussie church has, a disproportionate punch globally when it comes to innovation and breaking new ground. I'd love to just hear your thoughts, even briefly, just around innovation and what's feeding your spirit when it comes to innovation.
Thanks, Charlie. I love that. Okay, there's a few things I'll say, and I'll try and keep it punchy. Alpha has, there's something on Alpha to innovate, and I think that's because of the urgency and the importance of the message of the gospel, right? And so there's this urgency, there's this incentive to keep innovating, to keep getting the message out there, which I'm so grateful for. In Australia, we've been blessed to have amazing leadership in Australia of Alpha historically. So I'm standing on the shoulders of the giants, not literal giants, but the people that have gone before me, right? And I really want to honour like Melinda Dwight, who led Alpha in Australia for a long time. And one of the things that Melinda is brilliant at is taking risks.
Yes.
And I think that's so critically important to the innovation we need to keep seeing in our nation is how do we incentivize risk-taking? How do we celebrate risk-taking? Not foolishness, but faith steps, risk-taking. How do we create an environment in our own ministries, churches, families, whatever it is, communities where people are incentivized to take risks, particularly I would say denominationally? How do we really incentivize risk-taking, not just playing it safe? And that's often through the stories we tell, what we celebrate, what we recognize, what we value. It's very rarely that we celebrate risk-taking at the front end. It's often only at the other side when everything worked out great.
Yes.
And we don't talk about the stories where they didn't. So I think part of it is we've got to commit to taking risks. And if we're responsible for leading a denomination or a team or whatever, how do we create an environment where people are celebrated on the front end?
Wow.
The second thing I would say is learning from the coffee houses in the 1700s in places like England, where it was the coming together of lots of different places from different spheres of life, if you like. And it was that in those coffee houses where people talked together, dreamed together, wrestled with common problems, and it was from those places that innovation came forward. So I think the more we can get people together from different streams, praying, talking, collaborating, I think that's the way forward. And so, yeah,
certainly co-creating, where it's not one genius.
Yes, absolutely. Ben, that's amazing. Again, that's been such a insight. And I'd love now, starting with Emily, just to kind of move to that final question, that what do you want to deposit in our listeners today? What is a gift that you want to kind of give to those who are listening? And Emily, if you want to go first, and then Ben, just to wrap our time.
Yeah, I think the power of prayer, and not taking lightly our responsibility to pray. God instructs us to pray. He instructs us to ask and cover our families, cover the work of the ministry, be led by prayer. I often say to young people, Alpha needs to be birthed and backed in prayer.
Yes.
And we say these lines not because they sound good or they rhyme or we've got a 3-point message about it, but actually because we are dependent on prayer. And I think that's one thing we learnt, especially as church planters, that if we're going to step out in faith and be obedient to God, yes, he will come through, but we need to pray and we need to have other people praying for us as well.
Yeah.
And so I often have a circle of friends that are praying for our family and for Alpha. And so I know that whatever then I'm going to do, it's backed in prayer.
Yes.
It's just so important.
So good.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually the number one thing. This is a huge gap between that and this thought. It's more just on my mind recently is, I'm not sure, many people have been credited as coming up with this idea, but we overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 10.
Very good.
And I just think, Charlie, you mentioned it earlier, like the long obedience in the same direction. Just the power of consistency. So if it's like advice to myself as a younger person, it's like, don't underestimate just making great choices, godly choices, and committing to take risks or any of those things, and just doing that consistently over time. It really does add up. It really does make a huge difference. So yeah, it's exciting. And
So
I think what goes around our nation is amazing right now, Charlie. And so, yeah, mate, so grateful for you and just the incredible work of Exponential. We're in a better place in our nation because of people like yourself, mate, and your commitment to connect others, to be a connector with no agenda, but other than just to see the kingdom move forward.
Yes.
It's just so wonderful, mate. So thank you. Yeah.
Oh, you're very encouraging, and you guys have been very special guests. It's always wonderful to have. I've got a lot of friends out there, but you guys are wonderfully genuine friends. Love what you're doing, cheering you guys on. For our listeners today, if you haven't, you would have had to be living under a rock to have not obviously gone and seen the incredible resources that Alpha has to offer and their team that they would love to connect with you. So make sure you head to alpha.org.au. Guys, thank you so much for being on the podcast with you today. We are absolutely cheering you both on.
Thanks, Charlie. Love you, mate. Bless you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.